Let's talk about the juiciness that happened this week.
We
Oh,
have so quickly. Are we getting into it this soon?
so quickly. I mean, it's the second one on the thing. Here we go. Fine. We'll talk
Should I
about
go get a whiskey or something to get through this? I feel like this is going to be intense.
it. I mean, it is what it is. Listen, everybody. We've obviously heard the news about Concord. And so Sony is taking Concord offline on September 6th after a disastrous launch, literally giving it no time to survive and taking it down right before Astrobot launches live. I'm not sure if they're looking for this to just be a blip on the radar. We were talking backstage earlier before. I mean, it seems like they didn't even make enough money to cover the servers that the game was running on. To me, this seems like a miss on reading the market. I've seen Wibble's comment where he was saying that it was built for a marketplace that was 5 years ago. We're at a place in the industry where people see PvP, and if there's no AI element, you're not fighting a boss, it's only person versus person, you shouldn't be charging a premium dollar amount for it. And that was just a marketplace of 5 years ago. So I will have to agree to that point. I think to bring it to more of a price factor for today's market, you would need to add a single player campaign, give us 10 levels with bosses, and we would have to have some sort of horde mode, some sort of extra addition, because these were the three pillars of video games that we used to get with FPS. Call of Duty still follows this tradition very closely, and I just think they were trying to break the paradigm, kind of come in the middle, and unfortunately the market didn't receive it as well. Even though personally I enjoyed the game, I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was great teamwork, focused game, and a PvP experience I had never had before and actually enjoyed. But I'll give you your thoughts. Those were my thoughts on it. I've just been rambling.
It's such a shame. I absolutely loved my time with Concord. It was made more disappointing for me because I cashed in my PlayStation Stars rewards yesterday to get store credit to the point of being able to buy Concord. I was going to go to the gym after work, which I did do. And then once I got home from the gym, I was going to buy Concord with my PlayStation Store credit earned from PlayStation Stars. And it just, on my way home, the news broke. And I was crushed because I'd been looking forward to this game. I couldn't afford it at launch. So I'd been saving my PlayStation Stars credit because I knew I was this far off, and with a couple of the monthly ones that offer you coin rewards, I'd be able to then afford Concord just from PlayStation Stars rewards, basically not costing me anything but giving something to the developers. And I didn't even get the chance to buy it less than 2 weeks after its launch. And I have never been in a situation like that before. I've been into a store previously where I've saved up, gone to the store, and they've got no physical copies of it available. But I've never had a situation where I've never been able to buy the digital copy for the simple reason they took it off 2 weeks after. I'm very much in two minds about this. On the one hand, if it's sold as bad as industry analysts think, bear in mind, it only was about 57th bestseller on the PlayStation top sellers list, and didn't even break 700 concurrent players on Steam. So if it's sold as bad as the industry analysts think, I understand taking that step back, taking it offline, rather than hosting these servers, rather than just wasting money whilst they try to come up with some way to save it like Anthem did. Take it offline, go back to the drawing board, do something different. As you say, I think if they just add a single player campaign into it, they've already got the story set out because it's what we're going to be doing with the vignettes. They can do different gameplay styles, they can do different objectives within that, they can bring co-op into it if they so fancied. As you said, they could also throw something like a horde mode in there. If they actually put the time, effort, and money into it to save it and improve it and give it that multi-pronged attack, like you said, I think that would be a positive thing. I think if it came back with a single player mode, especially after the reception that Overwatch got for cancelling its single-player story mode, there would be a place in the market for it, and it would be much bigger than what it had this time. I think it faced a multitude of problems. One was people keep saying they don't want microtransaction-filled games. They just want to buy a game outright and get everything. But when a game comes out like that, they then don't buy it. So they're a bit hypocritical and two-faced in what they want and what they do. People wanted Overwatch. This was not Overwatch. They want a different Overwatch because Overwatch is so bad. They want to move away from that game, but there's nothing else like it. And there is no point in other people making Overwatch again, just with a different skin atop it, because it won't do any well. They'll just call it an Overwatch clone. Sony then didn't market this game. I've come across multiple people on social media who are like, wait, this game actually launched? I didn't even know it was coming out. What is it? What's going on? Terrible, terrible marketing. And then there was a driven hate campaign against the game. There's people who frequent this chat who have been part of that hate campaign since day one without even going hands-on with it. When a few of those have created some of the worst games ever to launch in history, I don't think they've got a leg to stand on and say anything about it. Yet everybody's gone after Concord because it's the hip and cool thing to do. And because it's, oh, woke and all this sort of crap. No, you're just an idiot, essentially is what I'm saying there. But the game itself, I loved. It was one of the tightest shooters that I have played in the last 5 years. The only thing that is better than it is Destiny 2 as a shooter. But that's gone so ability heavy, there's no just solid gunplay in that game anymore. So to have a game that feels like the gunplay that I adore and is competitive, and as you said, has this team balance, has the ability to do like a 2v1 or a 1v3 and whatever the case may be, I think is absolutely fantastic. But a multitude of factors, the silence of Sony, once again, the launch point was terrible. There was Outlaws, Wukong, and a bunch of others all coming out at the same time. And when you've got no marketing around your game, it's not really going to get the time of day. And then just a concentrated hate campaign. I enjoyed it. It was great. But obviously, if it's not making money, the studio can't then survive to make the next one. So rather than waste time and effort and finances, take it offline, go back to the drawing board, do something different. The bones are there to build a great single-player campaign. Make it and let us play it. And I think that would do everything it needs to. And if you need to make the multiplayer element of that free to play and just have the single player behind that £40 paywall, I still think you'll do gangbusters with such a thing. But yeah, it's very disappointing because I had just got the money to go and buy it.
Well, it is an unprecedented move. Sony will axe Concord on September 6th, just 2 weeks after the high-budget first-person shooter was released. This multi-million-dollar blunder goes beyond disaster, writes Push Square, and they are putting under the microscope kind of whose decision. Obviously, Jim Ryan was CEO at the beginning of this inception, this idea. And then Herman Holtz really championed it after he took co-CEO position. Listen, I think people... Pardon?
Herman Holtz was the head of PlayStation Studios. What that meant, whilst Jim Ryan was in place, is he's the guy who pushed for new studios to come on board. He's the guy who pushed for certain projects to be made, to be funded by PlayStation. He saw Concord and had a real soft spot for it. And I understand why, personally. I do. I see that game, I've played that game, and I've got a soft spot for it because it is a PvP shooter that I can get on with. There are so few of those in this world. It actually has good matchmaking. It actually has good gameplay. It's one of the tightest shooters I've played outside of Destiny. It's great. But he championed that so hard and pushed just that, and just the multiplayer angle of it, not understanding that PlayStation has built its brand on these massive single-player experiences, these high-quality, narratively driven, exceptional titles. And there is a place for that multiplayer. But we just had multiplayer only in Helldivers 2. We had multiplayer only announced in Fair Games as well, which is also a PlayStation exclusive. We've got Destiny 2, which is a PlayStation Studios game. And Herman just keeps pushing the same sort of thing and championing the same sort of thing. He brought Concord to Jim Ryan. He is to blame here. It is all on Herman Hulst, who was the head of the PlayStation Studios at the time, overlooking all of the software development, and he's now a co-CEO. The buck has to stop with him. Jim Ryan, whilst yes, he approved it, it was on Herman Hulst's presentation that it was done so.
Yeah, but he also made Horizon. Maybe you just stick to single-player games.
That's the thing. Know your demographic. Like,
yeah.
There is a place in the world for a game like Concord, with similar like setups as we've seen in other games where it's got more than just the multiplayer. But sometimes you feel like you're getting half a game. I felt exactly the same with the original Overwatch. That was a £40 game. That was multiplayer only. That was a 5v5 hero shooter that we had tons of over time. And again, it was a saturated market, but because it was from Blizzard, that Blizzard name gave it a bit of a free pass. People threw money at it and they ended up enjoying it. But not everybody can do that. Yes, PlayStation Studios backing you will get you so far. But if PlayStation Studios don't talk about it openly, and PlayStation Studios keep bringing games that players don't want, we haven't had a single player exclusive title since Spider-Man 2 in October. We're about to get the next one 11 months later in Astrobot. That's an unprecedented gap between the type of game that PlayStation players want and clamor for. You can have these in between those titles, but the cadence of those single players needs to be greater. And that will then allow these to have a better foothold because you're then waiting for the next excellent PlayStation Studios title to come out. But when you're going live service to live service to live service with gaps of 3, 4, and 6 months between them, it's not what your demographic wants.
No, I completely agree. And they've had to sort of bolster the gaps with third-party exclusives, which I have enjoyed, but it's tough sailing out in this generation. They really need to not make this the standard. I thought we were going for one game a quarter, and now we're not even getting that. So it's really unfortunate, and it's just the production of game. At this point, I know you're not a big advocate of AI, but honestly, somebody needs to kick these people in the butt and get games out onto production. And if AI fills the gap of this busy work that needs to be getting games out quicker and faster.
No. If we throw AI at it, the games will be worse because they're just derivative at that point. There's nothing new, nothing interesting.
It gives people
with
more time
anything
to think about new things.
What they need to do is focus less on things like the way a grain of sand falls out of a bag and more on the gameplay. If you look at the Quidditch Champions that's gone on PS Plus this month, graphically it looks like a PlayStation 2 game. I'm not going to lie about that one. It looks like a PlayStation 2 game. It's graphically terrible, but its gameplay is good. It's not great. It's not like a Game of the Year contender or anything, but it's good enough to bolster everything else. If the game comes out and has excellent gameplay, as Palworld showed us earlier this year, the graphics don't matter. If it comes out and has excellent gameplay, as Animal Well showed us earlier this year, the graphics don't matter. There is so much focus on hyper-realism, on things that gamers don't notice, don't care about. We don't give a damn about ray tracing. It doesn't do anything in-game. Get rid of it, get the game out the door quicker. We don't care about a grain of sand falling out of a bag that we literally will never see until you point it out on social media. Get the game out the door quicker. The reason things do well is because they have fun gameplay and a good gameplay loop, excellent stories, engaging mechanics. It's nothing to do with how they look. And AI is not going to help in any of that. It's just going to be derivative. Everybody's going to look like Nathan Drake. Everybody's going to move like Sekiro. And all gaming will become boring if we start throwing AI at it. It has no place in video game creation, in art of any sort. It should be in the medical field, solving cancer. It should be finding out how to cure cancer. That's what AI should be doing, not stealing art from people.
It can do both. We need some help
Oh yes,
here, but
it could go thievering. Yeah, that's such a positive thing to put out there.
well, I'm gonna keep moving on. There is a little bit more collateral damage from Concord as well. Because if you remember from the game festival thing that happened very recently, I just draw a blank. Secret Level announced the Amazon Prime anthology show. Well, guess what? One of them was about Concord. And what are the producers going to do? Very odd. They obviously played way too much into this. Now, that being said, this could be the perfect time to bring a revival back into Concord. They could launch it free to play right at the moment when the show hits and really have that big hype around it if it does well. But honestly, this is a massive blunder. They just pulled the plug way too fast, and now we're in a situation where I was kind of looking forward to seeing PlayStation do a show with Concord and having all that background and playing it, and now not so much.
I don't think this is a blunder. I think this is a bit of a blessing in disguise. How many gamers heard about Concord? You've seen it across social media. I've seen it across social media. The reason we knew about it, the reason people in chat here knew about it, is because we are engrossed in it. We are the hardcore. We are the 1% who read everything there is to know about gaming, who watch everything there is to know about gaming, who play as much as we possibly can. We are the very few people who might just get some value out of these video game subscriptions. The rest of the gaming industry, every other player, the other 99%, are not like us. There was no marketing around Concord. I haven't seen a single YouTube advert for it, let alone a television advert for it. So this getting a full episode in this Amazon series later this year, alongside exquisite titles that a lot of the gaming community know about, like God of War, like Armored Core 6, like Ghost of Tsushima, like the one that everybody knows, which is Pac-Man, to sit alongside these incredible characters in this television show could give it the boost that it needs. People suddenly start latching onto it. They see this show. What was the player count of Fallout after that show succeeded? What was the player count of The Last of Us after that show succeeded? If that episode of Concord goes, not Concord, Secret Level goes well for Concord, if it's received well, that is the beginning of a marketing campaign that could see the revival of the title. If they are able to get a horde mode, a co-op mode included, and re-release that at that time, and maybe even drop it on the same day as that episode, as a free-to-play, and then bring a single player with a charge later down the line, and that's a one-time fee, it could secretly be very, very good for the game. Like I say, we are the few. Everybody talking crap about Concord at the moment and putting all of this content out there. We are such a small portion of the video game industry, of video game players. There's 99% of the rest of them who haven't even heard of it yet. So a good episode of this Secret Levels from Amazon later this year could be a damn good catalyst for it.
Also, I've come to a new suspicion that I'm going to be running with as my new theory on Concord. This is all a marketing. Why would they shut it down in 2 weeks? Listen, Helldivers 2 got his biggest reverse up curve after a month because people were sharing it on social media. It was a phenomenon what happened to that game. And I think shutting down Concord is all marketing. I think it's just a ploy in making big buzz and everyone's talking about it. Now everyone's going to know about this Concord game. Show's going to hit. Concord's going to come back. This was all the plan. Numbers are going to skyrocket. And Herman Holtz is going to be sitting back like Mr. Burns. Excellent. It's all a plan, people. And we're just falling in with all the people. You got to look from the 4D. And that's how you figure it out. He's playing 4D chess.
Oh, I don't get 4D. I've been trying to teach my other half chess. Apparently, she never learned it through school or anything like that, which I find baffling. But yeah, I've been trying to teach her normal chess. I'll leave 4D chess for a few years down the line. Yeah. Do you want to address some of the messages in chat before we move on to anything else?
Oh my gosh, sure. Chat, you guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you for contributing. I've been trying to reach out and talk to you guys, but absolutely. Do you want to grab one? I don't know where to start.
I'll pick on Maker of Chaos first. He put one in there saying, my co-workers were talking about Concord closing. They were shocked PlayStation shut down a game. They said they were too busy with other games at the moment and were going to pick it up later. That's pretty much exactly the situation I was in. I didn't have the finances. There were other games out around the same time, and I've just got the money for it. The day that I got the finances to be able to buy it, they took it off sale. I couldn't even purchase it if I wanted to and just play the game for these final few days. So I completely understand that one. There's people who just haven't got round to it yet, and there's folks who are going to be disappointed, again, like myself, like Maker's co-workers, who we're going to pick it up later, which is absolutely fine as well. But I do also understand it costs a lot to keep these multiplayer servers online. And if you haven't got the population now to sustain it up to a point where people are ready to buy it, maybe a secondary launch around that episode of Secret Level would be a better idea. Do you think similar?
I think that oh, I was trying to respond to chat. SOCOM, I think, would be a huge shout out. We got Understanding saying that he wants to bring back Killzone or other games like that, older IPs like Factions. I'm actually a little bit confused why they trusted Bungie to shut down Factions, and then months later they tore apart Bungie's managing directors. Like, it doesn't seem like they're going down the right move. Gem is also saying Sony should focus on more co-op games. They're trying to
I
do
don't
that.
think there's room to talk there.
They're trying to do that, and they just don't seem to be hitting the right mark here. And I'm not sure what to do to really help them in this case, or if they have a path to really do it. I honestly think this may be a form of guerrilla marketing. It may all be a plan to get Concord even bigger numbers when the show releases, because why not try something different to make your game stand out? To shut it down after 2 weeks is aggressively too fast. But they do have a history. People are shouting out about MAG in the chat. Wibblesniff brings it up. This is a game that Sony also shut down, right? That was a live service game, PvP, gone after, I believe, 6 months. So it's hard to hit, and you roll the dice, and is it Snake Eyes, or are they going to try again? Why did they give up so quickly on Concord? I mean, I would have been right there with you, like you said, going there, getting it, picking it up on maybe the first price discount, or maybe when I got enough PS points, or maybe when I just got a spare time because I was playing Black Myth to Astrobot, and then maybe I'd jump onto Concord later. So it's like, dude, you gave me 2 weeks. What if somebody was on vacation and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that when I get back? And no, they can't.
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. Understanding saying we need Factions or the second coming of Killzone. Both of those games in their last releases didn't do numbers. The reason the second Factions, the sort of more live service Factions, was cancelled was development costs were spiraling out of control. They were beyond any of the single player games already, and it was nowhere near launching. So at that point, there's a lot of people who talk about the sunken cost fallacy, where you get to a point where you're so far in, you may as well see it through to the end. If there's light at the end of the tunnel, yes, but Factions was nowhere near launching. And what do you want to wait another 5-10 years for something to launch that's then 5-10 years out of date? Factions in The Last of Us 1 didn't last long at all. There were people playing that consistently for about 3 months. Trying to find a match after that point was nigh on impossible. It was great when you actually got into a match, when you were playing, it was fantastic. but you then had to get into private servers there afterwards, or private Discord servers to be able to match up with people of vastly different skill sets to get a game at all. Just trying to match make off the PlayStation 3, you were not getting a good game. You weren't getting a game at all more than half of the time. So I kind of understand that one going by the wayside because it didn't have the population from previously. There's games out there that have great multiplayer options, like Uncharted on the PlayStation side of things. The Uncharted 4 multiplayer is still live. It's still running. There's still people playing it. Why are they not publishing that? Why are they not marketing that? And I agree, Killzone's great, but Killzone Shadowfall, again, dropped off and had basically no one playing it in 4 to 6 months. And that was at the launch of the PlayStation 4. There wasn't a lot of content around at that time, and people had already moved on at that point. So I personally completely appreciate both of those titles. But if they're dropping off and this new IP isn't hitting, there has to be a complete reassessment. Is live service the right way, or should you just do multiplayer attached to a really solid single player or co-op player game?
And that is the question. I think that's a good question, and I think that is really the crux of it. PlayStation needs that single player to bring it in. I mean, to be honest, all these characters kind of feel empty, but if there was a single player campaign, each level explored each character and their backstory, you'd feel more of a connection. Oh, this is my favorite level. This is why I picked this guy. Like, they didn't do enough, and I feel like it was half-baked. And it's just frustrating because if you're a PlayStation fan, if you're a super PlayStation bro like us, you take the wins, but you also have to take the losses. And
you do, yeah.
And this one
is an interesting one.
Oh yes, I wanted to get to Wibble. Did you say Wibs? Yes. Serious question. Yeah. Do you think other devs will see this and be more cautious to release stuff? Doragon, you answer.
I think the devs would if it were left up to the devs. We've seen it a lot of the time. You've spoken about it on the download with the panel there. I've spoken about it on multiple different videos. What the devs want and what the investors want, and what a bunch of articles I've been reading about today are talking about is you've got non-video game investors coming in and investing in new projects. They want them to balloon, and they've got this idea of this massively high ceiling for profits. Video games have always been a low ceiling for profits. Enough that you could keep things turning over, keep things moving and what have you, but never enough to invest millions upon millions upon millions of dollars, billions of dollars even, and get your money back at any point in the next 20 years. It's just not feasible for what video games are because of the people who play them and the people who can afford to play them at that point. The higher you price them, the less people will be able to play, sort of thing. I think if it were devs alone, they would look at what has happened with Concord and definitely take a different approach. However, you've got CEOs who seem to be completely out of touch in the likes of Herman Holst, in the likes of Phil Spencer. Neither of them have got any idea about the industry, and they are just driving their respective companies into the ground at the moment. So maybe both of them need to go, and you need, I don't know, someone with a better idea of how actual gamers are able to play, want to play, and purchase at the moment. The hardware side of PlayStation seems to have it right with Nisano-san, but the software side doesn't. But you've got investors who've got this, as we said earlier, the sunken cost fallacy. They put money in, they want this game out to get their money back, but they don't understand how the industry works. So you are going to see many more failures, like Suicide Squad, like Concord, like Gollum, like King Kong last year. You're going to see so many more of these titles release before any of them start to get an idea of what actually makes money in this industry. So unfortunately, I think the answer is no.
I would say, I think the last, oh my god, we've been on Concord for a while. The last thing I'll say on this is that I think the one thing we've learned is the marketplace has spoken. If you're just going to offer PvP content, they say it should be free to play. If you're not offering any kind of AI to battle, single player campaign, co-op mode, something along that source, you can't be paying. That's the only way to earn monetary. And I think we've seen the marketplace kind of say that.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, enough Concord. Sorry, people. Concord is
Dead for now.
we'll be back. We'll be back. I guarantee it'll be coming back stronger than ever.